Welcome to Take Charge. I'm your host, Ingrid Paris-Hicklin. Welcome to Take Charge Health and Wellness Summit here at George Mason University 2015, hosted by the Old Dominion chapter of the Links Incorporated and George Mason University. With me is Michael Barris, the president of Old Dominion chapter of Links Incorporated. Welcome, Michael Barris.
Thank you for having me.
So why a summit?
The Links Incorporated is one of the oldest service organizations. The Old Dominion chapter, founded in 1993, really encompasses what we would like to give to the Prince William County community. One of the four basic thrusts of the Links Incorporated is health and human services. The Old Dominion chapter has a program called Full Steam Ahead, which is to help us close the achievement gap in Prince William County. A part of that achievement gap is not just education, but also health education. So that's why a summit.
Wow. So you heard it first. We have lots of things planned, so stay tuned because we're going to show you speakers. You're going to meet other people who are impacting the health of our community. We'll be right back.
Well, welcome to George Mason University. My name is Gary Krebs. I'm the director of the Center for Health and Risk Communication, and I am so pleased to help sponsor this Community Health Summit. I'm hoping that you will find a lot of the information provided here of direct interest to you, your friends, your family, members of your community, and you will be liaisons who will come out and share that information. This summit is focused on community leaders. I don't know if you knew that or not, but you are community leaders. Congratulations. Now you have that designation. But as community leaders, I think you have a certain responsibility to not only promote your own health, but also to provide relevant information and support to the people in your community that you care about. And I suspect there are a lot of people that you care about and a lot of people that care about you. This summit was designed to provide information about a whole range of important health risks that often are misunderstood, that often have very good strategies for prevention, treatment, and remediation. And I'm hopeful that you will find some great information and ideas, as well as make some connections with other people here that you will take with you. I'm so pleased to host this at George Mason University because George Mason University wants to be your university, wants to be the university of your community. And we want to talk with you and help you and support you in every way we can. So have a wonderful time today. I will sit in and try and learn a couple things too. I've got a lot to learn. And I will turn it over to the wonderful folks from Links Incorporated who are hosting this event. Mike Keller. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Burris, the president of the Old Dominion chapter of the Links Incorporated. The Links Incorporated is once again partnering with George Mason University, and thank you to Dr. Krebs and the staff at George Mason University for being such a phenomenal partner. The Links Incorporated is one of the world's largest service organizations. The Links have 5 main focuses: the arts, services to youth, international trends and services, national trends and services, and health and human services. Today's event is hosted by the Old Dominion chapter of the Links Incorporated Health and Human Services facet under the direction and leadership of Ingrid Paris-Hicklin. Will Ingrid and the members of the Health and Human Services facet please stand? If you're in the room. And the chairman of the Health and Human Services facet, Siobhan Kershaw, is she in the audience? Or is she out by the desk? Let's just give her a hand. Your hostesses this afternoon are the members of the Old Dominion, Virginia chapter of the Links Incorporated. Members of the Old Dominion chapter, will you please stand, ladies? And do we have anyone else in the audience who are members of the Links Incorporated, which we affectionately call Sister Links? Ladies, thank you for coming here this afternoon, and thank you for your service to the community. Our Eastern Area Director, Diane Hardison, was unable to attend. I know she would agree that today's event is intended to provide information and to share expertise, but most of all to make you think. Think about your health and the health of your family and friends. I hope when you leave here today, you'll take the information that's shared to start a dialogue in your community, to reach out to others, to share the information that you've received here today. So sit back, but don't get too comfortable. Relax, ask questions, and enjoy the dialogue and the friendship. Thank you.
Well, hi everyone. Well, hello everyone. Yeah, okay. Well, each and every one of you, I honestly believe I've spoken with you at one time or another, and I am so appreciative of you being here because it's most important that we come together as a community to talk about our health and well-being. And with that, I'm going to just pause for 1 second, and I'm going to give you a special message from our actress, Debbie Morgan. Just 1 moment.
To the remarkable ladies of the Old Dominion, Virginia chapter of the Lynx, incorporated along with all of you presenters and guests, I'm Debbie Morgan, and I bring you greetings from sunny California, where I'm currently working on a project. But at this particular moment, fighting through a bad sinus infection, so forgive me if I don't look like a beauty today. Anyway, I wish I could be there with you in person. I want to congratulate you on the wonderful work you do to keep our communities healthy and vibrant. I want to congratulate you on the Health and Wellness Leadership Conference today in partnership with George Mason University and the continued work of the Health Equity Ambassador in your chapter. Now we know that health of those in our communities affect all of us. We also know that early detection saves lives. That is why I am so passionate about involvement and service in the community. Again, I want to take my hat off to all of you hard-working ladies in the Northern Virginia area, where I hope to visit soon. And I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Evelyn for reaching out to me, and I hope to hear from you soon. Have a wonderful day.
I will be your MC this afternoon, and you can read my bio there. It's pretty long. I didn't know that Ingrid was going to put everything from my growing up in the South, my Army days. We do have some very outstanding speakers to speak today. I hope you live and learn. They're outstanding and renowned in their fields. And we're going to start with Dr. Anastasia Williams, and she is the founder of the Old Town Pediatrics, and she's a native New Yorker. Anybody else here from New York? Great. She's a graduate of Cornell University, and she is an attending physician at Novant Prince William Hospital, and she serves on multiple committees and is chairman of the Pediatric Council. So let's hear it for Dr. Anastasia Williams.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilkerson. I didn't know this was going to be a pediatric roast. I'm still most honored to be here with you guys today. Good afternoon, leaders of Northern Virginia. I'm glad we had an opportunity to hear what organizations many of you represent. A special thanks to Mrs. Ingrid Paris Hickland and the Old Dominion chapter for inviting me to speak here today. I'm going to be talking about healthy eating. And I find this topic particularly interesting because of my personal experience with childhood obesity. This picture is a picture of my lovely son when he was 7 years old. Of course I'm biased, I love this picture, I think he's gorgeous. But for the record, he did give me permission to speak today and to talk about his personal experience. He was always on the 50th to 75th percentile growing up. And in pediatrics, we follow children's growth based on where they fall compared to their peers. In the first grade, he became an avid reader, And although he was a very active child, he loved sports, he rode his bike, he played outside basketball with his father, my husband, Sandra Williams, who was sitting out in the audience. He spent he spent hours every day reading his books about adventure and about science. And sometimes he chose to do that rather than play outside. And I began to notice he was picking up some weight, so I spoke to his pediatrician. I was like, I'm kind of concerned. My son seems to be getting bigger. And she said what many of us were trained to say at that time, Anastasia, don't worry about it. He's still within the distribution of normal. So for us, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later. And so, all right, I just tried to stop worrying about it, but you mothers know out there when you see something happen and you can't help but be concerned and try to intervene. Well, eventually I went in for one of his routine checkups, and at that time she said, Anastasia, I'm very concerned about your son's weight. What are we going to do about this? And at that time, that's when I truly began developing a strong interest in childhood obesity and how we manage it. My story is a perfect example of how the medical profession has had to change. Over the last few decades, we've shifted our focus from not just managing medical problems. While there's always room for improvement, certainly in pediatrics, the focus is now much more on prevention, rather than just intervening when a problem becomes bad enough that you have to do something about it. We know that obesity and other eating disorders are diseases that we must try to prevent if we can, because once it exists, it is much more difficult to reverse. Today I will give a brief overview of trends in the United States from CDC data, a quick review of some important facts and current recommendations with regards to nutrition and healthy eating, and then spend a few minutes talking about how we as leaders must use our influence to really effectuate change in our community. When discussing what is a normal body weight, we are generally referring to what is the accepted definition of a person's weight relative to their individual height, the body mass index, or the BMI. The BMI can be derived mathematically by dividing your weight in kilograms by the square of your height in meters. You can also use special devices to measure a person's BMI. The mathematical equation is not always as accurate because it really does not take into account your muscle mass. So what do I mean? You could be the most fit, in-shape bodybuilder with a high weight, and your calculated BMI, because that weight is high for your height, can be very high. So mathematically, you can look like you're overweight. But if that weight is mostly muscle, which I love muscle, that's great. So, in a lot of ways, the BMI is not perfect in determining if a person is overweight. As you can see, if you could go back a slide. So as you can see, the BMI is defined for adults by, obesity is defined for adults as a BMI of 30 or greater. So that's the lowest one here. And that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. A normal healthy weight for an adult is 18.5 to about 25. And for children, we really go by the growth curve. I was talking about my son's growth curve. For his BMI, he was in the 50th to 80th percentile. So my pediatrician, who was a wonderful pediatrician, at the time was not concerned. But once he hit this bracket, over the 85th percentile, it was on. What are we going to do about this? Americans are now experiencing an epidemic of overweight and obesity. According to the National Institute of Health, 74% of adults in America are overweight or obese. So that's the overweight crowd and the obese crowd, 74%. 36% of Americans are obese, so just focusing on that group, which is more than double what it was about 45 years ago. And 18% of children are obese, which is more than 3 times what it was over 40 years ago. So, next slide. Many of you have seen these series of maps. Every few years, I like to review the national prevalence trends on obesity. I think it does a nice job of showing us what's going on in the country. So just to help us all get oriented, We're starting with 2011. This here, greater than 25% of the population in the state is obese, and greater than 30% of the population is obese. So these are the colors you're going to be kind of focusing on. So in 2011, you can see that the problem of obesity was mainly concentrated in the South and some of the Middle Eastern states. Virginia, DC, Maryland, we're in the middle zone, caution, so yellow here. And then the West Coast, you can see here, they're mainly in the yellow or green zone, less than 15% or 15 to 20%. So on this map in 2011, you can see that there are 13 states where all of the adults, of those adults, greater than 25% are obese. Next slide. So this is in 2012. Texas dropped out. So Texas on the other slide was in the red zone. It's down to the yellow zone. Missouri also dropped out, but we picked up 3 more states. So in 2012, you know, it wasn't that big of a shift. So here we have 14 states with adults who are greater than 25% BMI or obese. Next slide, please. And this is 2013. You can see right away how much more red you see in here. And here, the burgundy-ish reddish, that's the highest level. This is the first time we pick up 2 states where you see, where you have individuals, many individuals who are obese. Virginia, DC, Maryland actually stayed pretty steady. Next slide, please. If you look at this based on race, so this is for blacks, African Americans, non-Hispanic African Americans. It's the same legend here. So what that means is still the burgundy red is over 30% and 25% to 30% obese. Look at how much of the country is orange or red. So this is a grave situation in the African American community. 48% of all African Americans are overweight or obese. Next one, Hispanics. And so this is the slide for Hispanics. You can see still you see more red than you saw in the overall distribution, and it's an issue in the country for them as well. In the last slide. And this is for Caucasians. And so you still see it's kind of predominantly that same area where you're seeing struggles with obesity. I have to call out West Virginia. It's a big problem in that state, and it's been steadily getting worse there. Virginia, DC, Maryland, we stay pretty steady. So even for our Hispanic population, but not for the African American population. Next slide. So why do we care? Obesity is an independent risk factor for many comorbid disease, chronic disease states such as type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and many other diseases. As a result of this, you know, it affects your quality of life and it affects your life expectancy. And the most alarming thing for me as a pediatrician is the fact that more and more children are obese, and so now we're starting to see a lot of these same problems in kids. And so what does that mean for our pediatric population? We're concerned that their life expectancy is going to start to go down after we've worked so hard as a country to help all of us to live longer. If we don't get a hold on these problems that are happening in our pediatric population, then the future's not looking as bright for them as it is for us. Next slide. So what can we do? For starters, we need to change the way we eat. During her tenure in the White House, First Lady Michelle Obama launched a battle against childhood obesity with her Let's Move campaign. I love this slide because as a strong black woman myself, she is a strong woman that is determined to launch a battle to diminish childhood obesity among kids within one generation, which she has certainly put us on the path for. Next slide. She worked with the USDA and revamped the government's food icon. And this used to be the icon before, but in 2011, next slide please, they released the new food icon, the My Plate. So many of you have probably seen this already. And the whole point of the My Plate is that it, when you look at it at first glance, it's a smaller plate, so smaller portions. You see fruits and vegetables are taking up half of the plate. So half of your meal at mealtime should be fruits and vegetables. And it's important to have all of the 5 groups represented. Next slide. So 5 groups, we mean vegetables, you can keep pushing, fruits, grains, dairy, and protein of foods. Next slide. So for the vegetables, you want to make sure when you're eating the vegetables that you're picking vegetables that are varied color. You want to eat a variety of colors. It's okay to eat fresh, frozen, canned, dried, even juiced vegetables, but you got to be really careful about eating the juiced vegetables because they have a lot less fiber. You also want to be careful about the sodium in the vegetables and the preservatives because that's what oftentimes they use when they're frozen or stored or canned. So those are all things you need to watch. For the fruits, it's pretty much the same thing. You can do fresh, frozen, canned, or juiced fruits. Pediatricians are always cautious about fruit juice in kids. Yes, 100% fruit juice can count as a one of your food groups in your meal, but juices tend to have a lot of sugar. Certainly it's better to eat your fruit rather than to drink your fruit. No one should be drinking more than 4 to 6 ounces a day of fruit, and we know that larger intakes of lots of fruit juice is associated with childhood or increased obesity, not just in kids and adults too. For the grains, we have whole grains and refined grains. Grains have more fiber, whole grains have more fiber, vitamin B, and iron in them. And when you eat your grains, so that's that 25% of that plate in the food groups, half of that, at least half of that, should really be whole grains. Because refined grains are made from whole grains that have been milled to remove the bran and the germ. And when we say germ, I'm not talking about like the bad germs that make you really sick. I mean the germ, which is the most nutritious part of the whole grain wheat. So a lot of the refined grains that we find are made because they have a longer shelf life, so they last longer for the supermarkets and stores to sell. But people have recognized, the community has been much more sensitive to the fact that we need to put those things back into the diet, so they've been enriched. So a lot of times for the white bread, you'll see enriched white bread, which means they've added back the vitamin B and the iron. For protein foods, meat and poultry should really be lean, so you need to trim the fat off of it. And we'll talk a little bit more about fat, so you really want to get to the meat. Beans and peas are also a part of this group, and those are also in veggies. So if you use beans and peas to fulfill the protein portion of that plate, then you got to pick something else for the veggies. If you use it as a veggie, you got to pick something else for the protein. So you can't count a food more than once when you're trying to put together a balanced meal. Seafood, nuts, and seeds have less saturated fat, and they're also good sources of protein. And again, every food only counts once in the meal in terms of being part of the food groups. And dairy, fat-free, low-fat milk. Fat-free or low-fat milk. So low-fat is 1% is the milk that we prefer for the public to drink. Instead of whole milk, which is 4%, and reduced fat, which is 2%. You don't want to drink more than 2 to 3 cups. The younger children need to drink more milk, and whole milk actually from 1 to 2, because they need that fat for their developing brains. But for us adults, we don't need all that milk. We don't need as much. Most people do need additional sources of vitamin D, and that's, yes, it's partly because we don't want to ingest so much dairy that we're not getting the other nutrients that we need. But it's also because of the change in our environment. We used to get a lot of our vitamin D from the sun, but now with the ozone layer, we all know that there's an increase of skin cancer if you lay out in the sun for prolonged periods of time. I know a lot of my patients will ask, well, why can't we do it the way they did it back in the old days when people would just go out in the sun and get vitamin D? And that's because you may have a higher content of vitamin D in your body, but then you die of skin cancer. So the dermatologist will tell you hands down, get the vitamin D some other way and put your sunscreen on. So that's why ozone layer, blame the ozone layer. So, dietary fat. I like this slide because that is actually what 5 pounds of fat looks like. So no talk on healthy eating would be complete without talking about the dreaded but delicious, it really tastes good, dietary fat. Fat can be found in multiple food groups and exists in different forms. Saturated fat is the fat that is solid at room temperature. So that includes things like stick butter, stick margarine, shortening oil, and lard. These are the types of fats that have been linked to chronic diseases like coronary heart disease, meaning it can eventually lead to hardening and blockage of your blood vessels around your heart. It is what we often refer to as the bad fat, and really less than 10% of your diet, less than 10% of your total daily calories should be fat, and saturated fat. In fact, it's better to replace the saturated fat in your diet with unsaturated fat, because fat is actually an important part of your diet, so you don't want to completely eliminate it. But the saturated fat is not the type you want to mainly have. The next type we hear about now is the polyunsaturated fats and the monounsaturated fats, and those are the fats that are really not so bad. They exist as oil at room temperature. So a lot of your vegetable oils, olive oil, they fall into that category. Nuts also fall into that category. And fish also provide polyunsaturated fat. Fat still adds to your calories, so even though we call it the better fat, you don't want to eat a whole lot of fat in your diet. The trans fats, I call the trans fat the worst fat, because there really are no naturally occurring trans fats. Trans fats are pretty much man-made. They take the solid fat and they hydrogenize it, add hydrogen to it to make it like an oil, or make it well, it's not good for you, it's bad. We do it, it's cheap, that's one thing, it's cheap, which is why it's sold so readily. And we know for sure that the trans fats increase coronary artery disease, and you can find it in microwave popcorn, frozen pizza, margarine, and cake. And really it's best to avoid trans fats altogether. It's easy to see it on the back of the foods, on the labels. I went through my refrigerator yesterday, and I was like, how much trans fat do I have in my kitchen? And most of the companies are aware. We've done, the USDA, I think, has done a pretty good job at regulating that and making sure there's not a lot of it in our food because it's not safe. Restaurants still use it a lot, but most of your foods will say on the back, I hope. Now you know you can look, 0 trans fat. 0 trans fat. Cholesterol. So cholesterol is only found in animal tissues because you can only make cholesterol if you have a liver. So it's found in meat, seafood, chicken, eggs, dairy. And in the past years, well, let's just say years ago, we thought, the medical profession, we thought that if you ate a lot of cholesterol, it would cause your cholesterol to be high. Well, the most recent study, the report that came out for the USDA in 2015, a few months ago, actually started to debunk that. There really is no established relationship between a high ingestion of cholesterol and elevated cholesterol in your blood. So there used to be restrictions on how much cholesterol you could eat, but I think they're still trying to decide what to do, but right now there's no restriction. Having said that, the fact that eating cholesterol from meat and chicken and poultry and all that does not cause a high cholesterol, the fat, the saturated fat, and if you eat trans fats, your body is very good at making its own cholesterol from those fats. So that's not a reason to splurge on any and all fatty foods. Overall, the goal is to increase our intake of whole grains, vegetables, and fruits, and reduce our intake of sugar-sweetened beverages. You want to monitor how much 100% juice you drink. You can drink a little if you have to. It's better to eat it than drink it. Drink a lot of water. And you definitely want to decrease your intake of saturated and trans fats. it's best to focus on nutrient-dense food. So lastly, I would like to talk a little bit about the importance of utilizing our spheres of influence to effectuate change in our communities. So I've spoken some about the choices that we can make as individuals to be leaders. Oh, you can go back. I wish y'all could see this slide a little bit better. I love it. So this is the individual choices that we make. But as you know, during the introductions, we are sitting in a room with many leaders. And as leaders, with the knowledge that we've gained today, we have a responsibility to go back into our environmental settings, our sectors of influence, and interacting with people of our culture to educate them and to make changes that enhance healthy choices. So I challenge each and every one of you to think about what are the things that you can do at work or at church or at the school to help people to make healthy choices. You can do things, just some ideas to throw out there, like stock the vending machines at work if you have, well, if you have any voice in that, with healthier choices. When you plan an office party, try to incorporate healthy food options and maybe even a vegetarian option. Provide easy access to filtered water. Bring water bottles. I have a company water bottle that people can go back and forth and refill. At our office, we have group walks at lunchtime. They go out and they go walk in, and you can even walk to the farmer's market. Then you can go there and pick some healthy foods. Next slide. So, as many of you know, it is very difficult to maintain a change in lifestyle all alone. Community support and engagement will help us all stay on track. I have here with me Mrs. Andorra Calhoun. She introduced herself. Raise your hand one more time. She is a wonderful resource for any leaders looking for guidance and support to improve their workforce healthy behavior. She's working with our practice. We're in Manassas, Virginia, and Gainesville, Virginia. 15% of our patients are Latino. I can tell you, honestly, regardless of race, it is a big problem, especially when you throw in the overweight piece among our kids. And for us, we just found that it didn't seem to be enough to just talk about what foods you eat and eat this many fruits and eat this many vegetables. We do the 95210 movement sponsored by Northern Virginia. It's really about the behaviors behind the eating and what's going on in those families. And I was very blessed to meet Andorra, and so she's working with us to start a group intervention session to work with kids who are at risk, those kids who are in that overweight where my son was before he didn't get bigger, to try to stop it before it becomes a big problem. So last slide. So you know what this is. So this is my son, Jonathan. In the 10th grade, he decided he didn't want to be big anymore. And so he started running. To this day, he still runs 2 to 3 miles every single day. He eats pretty healthy. He doesn't really restrict himself, but he's conscious of the portions. He's wearing his first stethoscope that he had gotten for his birthday. And he starts medical school to study to be a pediatrician himself in the fall. So, that's why we get on So it's a problem. It's a problem for all of us, and we all have a responsibility to make a difference and to help others make good choices and to help ourselves. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Dr. Suzie Carmack, is a wellness promoter. So Dr. Suzie Carmack, she's a multidisciplinary scholar. She's dedicated to promotion of psychosocial health and well-being. And she also has shown the predictive ability of strategic communication patterns to enhance all dimensions of well-being: physical, mental, emotional, social, and comprehensive. Additionally, her Centered Being Workplace Wellness Intervention integrates her research in the areas of movement science, kinesiology, mindfulness, and positive communication strategies. So let's hear it for Dr. Suzie Carmack to hear what she has to say.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. So as a kinesiologist that's now a health communication scholar, I want to thank Ingrid and everyone else who's invited me to be here, first of all. But I want to encourage you all to stand up and go give someone a high five, because we all need to move a little during the day, and I know you've been sitting. So I'm going to give you the gift. We keep saying find time to move, so I'm giving you that time. Go give someone a high five and say hello. Go meet a new person and say hi. So what you just did is how health behavior change happens. And what's fascinating is, after spending 20 years looking at health from all these different perspectives, I will tell you short and sweet what I have found. My personal perspective: we know what to do. But are we socially supported to do it? Do we feel confident enough doing it? At the end of the day, with my kinesiology degree, if you don't know what that is, that's fine, I didn't either. It means movement science. We look at what it means to move for our bodies and our minds. And that was a nice fancy way for me to get into some boardrooms when I really was basically a yoga teacher. And I found that teaching people yoga was helping them in different aspects of their lives, and I knew I was on to something. So essentially what I'm going to show you today is that I turned a corner probably about 5 years ago when I started to realize it wasn't about how fancy pants I could get the science to be. It was actually about how I could have conversations with people to motivate them, how I could get them to motivate other people to move, and how we could actually have some difficult conversations, because that's where the real difference happens. So I know we're in our Saturday afternoon and it is beautiful outside, so I'm going to fly through this. If you have questions afterward, I'm more than happy to answer them. But I call it making sense of joy. So we know that communication is transactional. If you took a communication class as little as 10 or 20 years ago, you might have remembered them talking about it kind of like baseball. I send a message, you catch it, you might miss it. You might have had someone throw you a message you weren't ready to catch. You with me? Okay. So in the field, just like biology and neuroscience, etc., have evolved over time, communication has evolved over time too. And we now use cool, fun graphics, like the one you see up here. And it shows us, let's go back a slide if that's okay, Ingrid, thank you. And thank you, Ingrid, by the way, for helping me out here. So when we look at that, we see that right now, we're in a communication transaction. Yes, I'm doing most of the sending if someone looked at this room, but you're sending back to me. And we're creating meaning around this experience. There's all kinds of meaning to be created. I love the say no to say yes to say no framework. Great example of how what we say and what the meaning is don't always sync up, right? So we know, though, that communication, it makes our blood move. We've all fallen in love. We've all been really upset with someone. These are physiological moments, right? Well, what was said and what wasn't said, and what's the meaning? That's really where the communication piece comes in. There's over 150 definitions now of what communication is, and I won't drive you crazy with that. It drove me pleasantly crazy, but I'll try to boil down to what I at least have found, my own little perspective of the whole big pie. Essentially, when I came into health promotion, I realized about halfway through my program, and I want to give acknowledgement to Dr. Gary Krebs, who started us off today. He's been my mentor. He's one of the main reasons why I was fortunate enough to get my PhD in communication, health communication, specifically at Mason. He mentored me in my dissertation project, and in the midst of being a world-renowned scholar in health communication, so I'm personally grateful to him for that. I wouldn't be here right now either if it wasn't for him. But I will tell you that what I got fascinated with in the midst of my health communication studies was, what are we really trying to get to happen here? We're trying to get people to be healthy, but we would be remiss if we did not accept the fact that we're also trying to help people to live well and to quote-unquote be happy. I'm a mother now. There's a 6-month window where I can say, and I'm in that window right now, where I can say I'm the mother of 3 teenagers. I got a 13 on one end and I got a 19 on the other. I obviously want them to be healthy, but I want them to be happy too. I want them to have a quality of life. Wherever they end up and whatever they do, I want them to be looking out for their short-term and long-term health, and I want them to be living well, to be happy, to find their purpose and their passion. So I started to be fascinated with, what is this thing called well-being, and how does that fit in with health promotion? And is it enough to just tell people, quote-unquote, go take a yoga class, go on a walk with your friends, eat some vegetables, and these are all important messages, and if I'm sounding like I'm deterring from them, I apologize, that's not my intention. But underneath that, why do you want people to do those things? I want my daughter to eat vegetables so she can become a young woman and go do the things that she wants to do. And I know that her whole life will open up if she takes care of herself. So you can see health and happiness are intertwined. So in the research, we have this whole field of well-being, and I started to look into it, and it was quite the can of worms. So I'm actually going to ask you to do a research. You're going to go through just a tiny bit of what I went through last year in a good way. I had the fortune in my dissertation research to actually talk to 38 people for at least an hour each, and to talk to them about, what does this thing well-being mean to you? So I want you to turn to the person next to you and just ask them that and see what you find. Go. So now continue the conversation and actually now ask each other, and this is a privacy management moment, obviously don't share anything you don't want to share, but if you were to ask someone, ask this new friend you've made, how would you describe your well-being? So we know what it is. I know that, there's baseball, there's a game, but how I would describe my ability to play it would be a whole different matter, right? So how do you describe your well-being? How would you describe it? Go ahead and ask each other. And now here's the question that I will encourage you for time to pick up the conversation after we're done today, and to ask them this question, and this is where we really get to the heart of it. If you had a magic wand, and you could improve your well-being in any possible way, how would you use it? What was fascinating to me when I asked people about their well-being, what is it? Happiness, having the life I want, okay, consistent with the literature. Secondly, how's your well-being going? Pretty fine, thank you for asking. If you had a magic wand and you could improve it, how would that go? Well, I'd get rid of the fact I can't sleep at night because I'm really stressed out. Okay. It's very interesting to us because most of us, fun fact, will self-rate at anywhere from a 7 to an 8. Very rarely will we measure a 9 or a 10 on a 1-10 scale of our well-being. We're all a little extra optimistic. People who study optimism will tell us that we're all a little extra optimistic, probably to a fault. But on the other hand, none of us think we're perfect. And we'll all justify the decisions we make in the ways that we live because we're all trying to drive to that 10, but we all got a couple things in the way. And that's where my research really started to take off. And so what I'd like to show you now is some findings that I have. I hope that they'll be helpful to you and those that you're going to go back to. And I'll try to be as short and sweet as I can. The next question, by the way, I was remiss, is a question that if I were to do the study again, a follow-on study, which I'd like to do, is to ask the people in your life, and I actually did this with my class. One of my class students is here. She gets bonus points, so there you go. I asked my students to not only ask themselves those questions you just went through, but I asked them to go and ask people in their lives, how would you rate my well-being? So if you all could go and talk, for example, to my daughter, to my teenage young men, to my partner, to my friends, if you could ask them how I'm doing, to my ex-husband, how would they rate my well-being? And my doctor, how would they rate my well-being? This is where the complexity comes in, because there's a dark side to happiness. The secret side of happiness is that we do sometimes things that are not so good for us because we're trying to preserve or get back to happiness. People who are narcissists, sociopaths, addicts, workaholics, We're all, quote unquote, happy by self-rating, but that doesn't mean that we're doing things that are good for us and for other people. So it's important that we balance what we're driving to, our meaning, our passion, our purpose, many ways that we would define well-being, but that we do that in a way that we have some checks and balances, and that we are not afraid to ask those hard questions. The stories that were told today, and I really appreciate them, of looking at the duality, how can I balance what my inner drives are and how that relates to not only my health, but the people around me. This is a quick question, and you can think about your well-being in terms of self-rating. There's a questionnaire called the Who 5. If you contact me later, I'll be more than happy to unpack that for you. This is a slide I'm going to push past for time. The World Health Organization has been saying since 1948 that health is not just not having a problem. Although ironically enough, in public health, that's usually how we measure the health of a population. We look at, but how quickly people die and what they die from. That's usually how we measure how healthy a population is. That's a little different than saying what's going well for them. And so this is where my fascination with well-being came from, was that good old-fashioned quote. So what I found, boiling it down, is that there's two ways to essentially measure well-being, and I spent literally 18 months essentially driving my own well-being insane, trying to find out what well-being was. But let me boil it down to you. Subjective well-being is essentially what you would say about you, what you would say about how you feel, happiness, cheerfulness, how you would say about how satisfied or not you are with your life and where it is, how much meaning and purpose you have, and your overall quality of life. That's you deciding what you think about what you do and you feel. One of the constructs I'm especially fascinated with right now is emotional vitality. And this goes the extra step of how I feel about how I am physically, how I relate to others, and how masterful or non-masterful I feel about the way I manage my life. On the other end of well-being, the subjective well-being, i.e. self-rating, then we go to objective well-being, how others rate you. Not as much literature about this, and a little more complicated in our real lives. What would a health official say about you? You might pick up a glass of water and say, I feel great, I'm drinking water, it's good for me. But if you didn't know that that water had something in it that was not good for you, then someone rating your well-being from the outside would find that you had a problem. You might think you're in a great relationship, but your friends all know better, and they want to have that conversation with you. Or maybe you want to do that for your friend. So this idea of someone else, something else, let's just call it other, is rating your well-being. And how do those two things go together in a way that there's some synergy and more synchronization than not? So now I'm fascinated with this word called joy. And it's really where, to me, we put that all together. The idea of having experiences of satisfaction and expression, but we're also having the ability to impose joy, to express joy in various ways. So here's our case study. Short and sweet. Would you describe Mick Jagger as someone who was happy? Absolutely. Would we be worried about his health? Possibly. And if we looked at the trajectory of his career in life, we see someone who's incredibly passionate about what he does, has been incredibly successful. A health behaviorist might have a few issues to have a conversation with. You get my point, right? But overall, there's a sense of, there's a lot of joy in him. But then again, how healthy has that been for him? But then again, how much health has he created by the ways his music has affected people to realize their story is not just theirs, that they can relate to his stories? I can't get no life satisfaction, you might say. So here's the thing. Life happens. We're all in a story. We're all in our own stories. And so one thing that the stress and coping literature tells us is sometimes stress or life happens and we go into crisis mode. We don't know what to do about whatever it is, and or we don't feel we have the resources around us to do something about whatever it is. And that could be a good thing. If I'm afraid to get up in front of people and talk, the moment of having the beauty of this opportunity might be too much for my physiology to handle. If I am a business owner and I have a new project, I'm not sure what resources to throw at, that is a crisis just as much as not knowing how to have a difficult conversation with someone I love about the fact they're smoking and I really wish they would stop. On the other hand, well-being is those feelings we felt before. But the interesting thing is that stress can go south or north depending on how we approach it. And that's where our own choice for self-care comes in. This is just a definition of crisis, and this idea that it's framed around the idea of unperceived threats, or the perception of threat. Notice it's a perception. We decide if it's a threat or not. And well-being is a condition of existence. It is a state of being. So what makes the difference? My research essentially found, and this will be my crescendo, this was to be kind of a pivot point in the talk, but I'll just pull it down for you now. Sense-making is a very specific definition of communication. It basically says, if we can make sense of what's going on, we are sense-making. Companies use it all the time. You may remember the BP oil spill, and obviously there was a lot of communication fallout from that moment from a PR perspective. And that company did what it could to create a new sense-making around the endeavor to show us that the company was doing its best to address the issue. Whether or not you agree with their choices pre and post of the event, and whether or not you understand and have empathy for their choices that were made, you can see that they were doing their best by the way they did their promotion to create new sense-making, to position the company as a one that made a mistake but that was doing what they could to fix it. So if we think about that in terms of our lives, it's just a micro example, we get to continue to draft, redraft, edit our story. We always have the pen. It's just that sometimes we forget. Actually, let's pause back for one moment. So essentially, those of you who are research